I despised my father. When I was younger, I cherished a particular stuffed animal. However, due to my youthful speech impediment, I couldn't properly pronounce V's. Thus, my beloved stuffed animal was affectionately known as my Bieber. I carried it everywhere with me, fiercely attached. Despite attempts by others to take it away, I refused to part with it. My cousins would often tease me by playing keep away, but I knew that crying would promptly end their games and return my Bieber to me. One evening, I accidentally left my Bieber outside in our country yard. As night fell, darkness enveloped everything, and ominous storm clouds gathered. In my imagination, the rural setting teemed with potential threats, monsters, zombies, and fearsome animals with sharp teeth, all amplified by the encroaching storm. Worst of all, I feared my Bieber would be lost in the rain. In desperation, I expected my father to rescue it for me. Surely, my tears would compel him to brave the darkness and storms. Yet, to my disbelief and dismay, he callously told me to retrieve it myself. I cried and pleaded, questioning his love for me. How could he be so heartless? Didn't he understand that boys were supposed to respond to girls' tears? Defiantly, I stormed to my room, slamming the door, and sobbed throughout the night. Even as my parents argued downstairs, my father remained unmoved. Each lightning flash and thunderclap reinforced my disappointment. He had failed me. Didn't he realize he was supposed to fetch my Bieber for me, no matter what? It was always there for me, regardless of my mistakes. When morning arrived, my Bieber was still nowhere to be found. Resigned, I decided to fetch it myself and punish my father with the silent treatment, a tactic I had observed my mother use countless times. I overheard her mocking my father on the phone to other men, and when truly angered, she even banished him to the couch. I eagerly anticipated inheriting these powers when I grew older. Outside, as I searched for my Bieber, it was nowhere to be seen, likely washed away by the storm. Tears welled up once more, and this time, my father finally responded. He approached me, concerned, asking what was wrong. I stubbornly remained silent, crossing my arms and attempting a mean, pouty expression, something I had seen my mother use when she was angry. Could it work for me? No chance. My father simply chuckled and instructed me to fetch the mail. I stood my ground, refusing to let him mock me like my cousins did. I was determined to emulate my mother, though she had far more experience. However, when my father's voice rose in command, my resolve crumbled. I dreaded the thought of his disapproval, despite knowing he'd never laid a hand on me. As I trudged down the gravel path to the mailboxes, kicking stones and muttering curses about my father, my tears flowed once more. But these tears were different, tears of joy. Inside the mailbox, shielded from the previous night's downpour, was my Bieber. It was safe, undamaged, and back in my arms. I vowed never to let it go again, whispering declarations of love and loyalty to my cherished companion. I despised my father. While I learned crying wouldn't sway him, my mother refused to relent. The household echoed with shouting matches, slamming doors, and the occasional crash of shattered dishes. Her phone conversations, always secretive and whispered, seemed to increase whenever my father was away. I never quite heard her words, but I caught her laughter and the abrupt hang-ups when he returned home. One night, there was an unusual calm. No yelling, no tears, just Mom quietly packing a few suitcases and leaving. A strange man in a red pickup truck awaited her in the driveway. She loaded her bags, climbed into the cab, and drove away without a backward glance. I was stunned. Mom was really leaving? Who would teach me the art of manipulation, the tactics she used on Dad to get her way? Who would show me those powers that could make him sleep on the couch? She was supposed to guide me through everything. Dad tried to explain that her departure wasn't my fault, that their issues were theirs alone. He insisted they both loved me but needed time apart to sort things out. I was furious with him for making Mom leave. I lashed out, telling him if he truly loved her, he should face his fears and bring her back. Dad, who seemed like a giant to me, broke down in tears, a sight that shattered my perception of him. Mom had once referred to him as a wimp during a phone call with a friend, but seeing him vulnerable changed everything. Despite my parents' divorce, I ended up living with Dad while still trying to grasp the powers Mom wielded. I begged to live with her, believing Dad was weak and wanting to learn more about the influence girls had over boys. In retaliation, Dad insisted I stay with him, ensuring I didn't see Mom during court proceedings or when I spoke to the judge. He even arranged it so that I experienced only one Christmas, unlike my friends from divorced families who spoke of enjoying two celebrations, each with its own unique dynamics of guilt and generosity. I blamed Dad for everything. If I had lived with Mom, I believed I would have known how to have two Christmases and wield similar powers. I despised my father. As I grew older and entered high school, I loathed homework, particularly biology. Dissecting worms and pigs was revolting, the stench overwhelming, akin to a post-football practice locker room but intensified. Who cared about anatomy, recessive genes, or chromosomes? None of it seemed relevant to real-life conversations or interests. I was fortunate to find that others shared my disdain for their parents as much as I despised my father. Whenever possible, I escaped the house to spend time away from him. While my friends also complained about their parents, I envied them. They lived in large houses in new neighborhoods filled with the latest gadgets and computers, things my father never provided. It was yet another reason to resent him. He didn't buy me the cool stuff my friends enjoyed, another power I felt I missed out on. But it didn't end there. Dating was even worse. I'd go out with a cute boy who thrilled me with dangerous stunts, like speeding through town or sneaking into forbidden places. The adrenaline rush was exhilarating, like a roller coaster ride. When he kissed me, my world spun, and I felt like I was floating on cloud 9, experiencing heights I'd never imagined. Unfortunately, my father always brought me crashing back to reality. On one occasion, he awaited my return with shotguns in hand, conveniently cleaning them as we pulled into the driveway. He sent me to my room and had a stern talk with my boyfriend, ensuring I never saw him again. From then on, boys avoided dating me out of fear of my father. I knew crying or staying out all night wouldn't work. He'd come looking for me, which was more humiliating than the shotgun incident. I couldn't believe my father was ruining my life just because Mom had left him for someone else. But as I grew older, I began to see my father differently. During one of my grounding periods, while cleaning out a walk-in closet to organize my clothes and shoes, I realized something. While I might not have owned the latest gadgets and toys like my friends, I did have a wardrobe full of clothes. They weren't high-end brands like Aeropostale or Abercrombie & Fitch, but practical choices from Walmart that stretched my hard-earned money. Maybe my father's lessons weren't entirely misguided. The closet was a mess, forgotten over time, with cobwebs clinging stubbornly. Some of the clothes inside seemed like relics from another era, and I couldn't fathom why anyone would choose to wear them. As I sorted through the old clothes, preparing them for donation to Goodwill, I stumbled upon my parents' wedding album and other keepsakes. Flipping through the album, despite the dated fashions and hairstyles, my mom looked stunning in her white wedding dress. Her eyes radiated love for my father, who, unlike his usual casual self, looked handsome in his rented tuxedo. Each picture evoked memories of their time together, their love palpable in every frame. But those moments felt distant, frozen in the faded photos and dust-covered album. Since Mom left years ago, my father hadn't seemed happy. The only time I glimpsed a hint of his former self was when I received an award at school, no matter how trivial. In my teenage perspective, I often felt he did it to embarrass me endlessly. Yet, as I reflected on these photos, I started questioning if I had misjudged him. Not once had Mom attended these events, which added to my confusion. Setting aside the album, I discovered a trove of letters in a Tupperware container. The sheer volume hinted at a collection of love letters, sentimental relics from a time when declarations of love were penned on paper adorned with stamps and postmarks, not shared instantly on social media. One letter excerpt read, "It's only been a month, but I am utterly in love with you. Your smile lights up my world, and your eyes hold me captivated. Your beauty is beyond compare, and the thought of you loving me in return fills me with awe. I would journey to the ends of the earth for you, my Venus, my Juliet. I see myself spending my life by your side." These were my father's words, vivid and passionate. He had been quite the romantic in his youth. What had happened to that magic, that spark? It was clear Mom cherished these letters, evident from the quantity she had saved. Yet, upon closer inspection of the envelopes and handwriting, I noticed a change, not just in the penmanship but also in the tone of the letters over time. I was shocked to find letters at the back of the container that were starkly different from the romantic ones earlier. These letters were blunt, focusing on physical intimacy rather than emotional connection, filled with vulgar language instead of poetic expressions. Despite their explicit nature, each ended with the phrase, "I love you." These were not written by my father, and what disturbed me more was that they were dated after my parents' wedding. What was going on? Some letters were sweet and romantic, idealizing a future together, while others were crude and focused solely on the moment. But the most devastating discovery came when I found a letter from a laboratory in California. Its contents would alter my life forever, except for one constant. I hated my father. How could he keep such a secret from me? Yet, if I reflected on it, maybe it shouldn't have been a surprise. His hair, though military short, shared the same dark brown shade as Mom's long curls cascading down her shoulders in their wedding photos. Even their brown eyes reflected love and happiness. Perhaps my blonde hair and blue eyes were simply recessive genes, as biology class taught. How could my father deceive me like this? The official-looking letter declared that I wasn't my father's biological daughter. How could he deceive me and hide my true parentage? Did he force Mom to keep this from me all these years, making me call him father without ever knowing the truth? Despite everything he'd done for me, I couldn't believe his deceit. I needed answers and couldn't trust the person who had hidden this truth. I had to find Mom and demand an explanation. Maybe then she could shed light on how she could marry someone like my father, whom I now saw as an evil monster. Finding Mom proved challenging. Grandma and Grandpa hadn't seen her since she left Dad, and my aunts and uncles seemed indifferent. Just as I was losing hope, a police blotter in the newspaper revealed a domestic disturbance involving Mom at a trailer park. Finally, I might get the answers I sought. I don't know what I expected as I arrived there. Perhaps a resolution where all my life's wrongs would be righted, where Mom's home would be a sanctuary from the darkness at my own. Instead, I found a cluttered yard strewn with garbage and litter, resembling more of a junkyard or a long-running rummage sale than a home. The grass was either dead or overgrown, a stark contrast to Dad's meticulously tended lawn that he would never let fall into such disrepair. Mom noticed my arrival and approached me first. At first glance, she didn't recognize me, and I struggled to reconcile her appearance with my memories. Her bleached blonde hair looked artificial, with dark roots showing through, and her tattoos, once a statement, now seemed out of place. She had visibly changed since leaving Dad, and the smell of nicotine clinging to her clothes made me worry about the effects of secondhand smoke. Our reunion, supposedly tearful, was short-lived. I wasted no time in demanding to know who my biological father was. Initially, she tried to insist that Dad was my real father, but I confronted her with the letter from the California laboratory. Her expression darkened, and reluctantly, she confessed that my biological father was a brief fling, a mistake. She claimed to have loved Dad and explained that my biological father had vanished after a short-lived affair. As we spoke, a man emerged from the trailer, balding with a protruding belly. He was my biological father. While Mom's relationship with him had been a mistake, my choice of summer clothes that day felt like an even bigger one. The man leered at me in a way that made my skin crawl, reminiscent of someone with unsavory intentions. This was the person Mom had left Dad for? I fought back nausea, turned away, and left without looking back. I hated my father. Eventually, I met a boy who earned my father's begrudging approval, despite enduring the intimidation tactics my father employed. Unlike other boys, who my father shielded me from due to their reckless behavior, this boy respected me for who I was beyond appearances. He made my heart race with genuine affection and companionship, not superficial thrills. While many of my peers struggled with unplanned parenthood, he proved himself different by demonstrating responsibility. Now, preparing for marriage, I faced a dilemma: who would walk me down the aisle? Who would give me away to my fiancée, the last man to hold my hand before I became Mrs. Banks Williams? I couldn't ask my biological father. I didn't even know who he was. The thought of involving Mom's boyfriend, or whatever he was, disgusted me. No, it was supposed to be my father who would proudly escort me into this new chapter of my life. My father raised me as his own daughter. He loved me with all his heart, providing everything a child could need. He forgave my mother despite her mistakes because he believed in second chances, even when others condemned her. He taught me the difference between love and lust, emphasizing that true love is unconditional and mutual. He showed me that love is about giving and receiving equally. He also taught me the distinction between merely living and truly having a life. Living in the moment is fleeting, but building a life with someone you love endures forever. Some in our community called him names, but to me, he was the epitome of strength. How many men could embrace a child not their own and raise her with such love and devotion? That man was my father. I regret not telling him I loved him before he passed away. I am forever grateful for the lessons he taught me. If my fiancé cannot understand why I want to hyphenate my name to honor my father's memory, then he doesn't truly know me or deserve me. Daddy, I love you so much. There wasn't a dry eye in the room as Melissa Banks stepped down from the podium, collapsing in tears beside her father's coffin. Her fiancé, Aaron Williams, hurried to comfort her, finally comprehending her deep bond with her father and supporting her decision to honor him by hyphenating her name. Even those who had gossiped about her mother's affairs and criticized her father's choices looked away in shame. The only sound was a soft amen from the pastor. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Write your opinion in the comments.